Hello, and welcome back to the Wellness Pharmacist, where we talk about autoimmune health, medication guidance, and of course, thriving with chronic illness. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. I'm a pharmacist, I am a chronic illness educator, and a patient advocate. So today we're talking about something that sparked a lot of interest in both the scientific world and in patient forums, communities, the connection between your gut and your immune system. And so we will discuss how our gut flora and fauna can either support or even sabotage our immune systems, especially when we're living with autoimmune conditions like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Sjogren's. The list goes on and on. So first, let's talk about our gut microbiome. This refers to trillions, with a T, trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi living and colonizing our digestive tracts. In a healthy state, these microbes aid digestion. So they help break down our food so that we can absorb the micronutrients in our bodies easily. They also help regulate hormones, which is very important. And most importantly, to me, they help modulate our immune response. They help boost our immune response. They help keep us healthy. So according to the National Institutes of Health, about 70 to 80% of our immune cells are located in our guts. That's incredible. The gut microbiome is considered complex. It's a complex community or ecosystem of microorganisms that reside there in the gastrointestinal tract that play a really important role in health and disease. Here are some additional statistics and facts about our gut flora and fauna that you may or may not know. So the human gut microbiome contains approximately 100 trillion, with a T, microbial cells. This is about 10 times more than the number of human cells in our bodies. 10 times. So we're just covered. We're covered in bacteria, healthy bacteria that leads to really good outcomes, and bacteria that can lead to disease states, infections, and the like. The gut also is estimated to contain between 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria. That's 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria. So we want a really good variety, right? We don't want like just a few. And the collective genome of the gut, this is known as the microbiome, so the flora and fauna, it contains about 3.3 million genes, which is 150 times more than the human genome. So again, we are just covered in bacteria, which is not a bad thing. It can be bad if our immune systems don't function properly. Now, with that, we have only about 30 to 40% of this bacteria, these species, that are shared among different people. So everybody's unique, everybody's different. And that's something to remember. Only 30 to 40% are, you share with just any old stranger on the street. And that's why we have such a difference in our immune systems and our susceptibilities to certain disease states. Okay. Is all lost? No, not necessarily. Diet has a significant impact on how our guts work and how our immune system functions. But I'll get into that in a few minutes. So alterations or changes in this gut flora and fauna have been linked to numerous disease states. And we're talking obesity, diabetes, type 1 and type 2, inflammatory bowel disease. This is ulcerative colitis, this is Crohn's disease, and even mental health issues like depression and anxiety. So let's break that down even further. As for obesity, there are studies that I've researched that show there are differences in this gut microbiome between people that live with obesity and those that are lean. Obese individuals tend to have a higher rate of firmicutes to Bacteroides. Okay, so those are specific strains. Now, in diabetes, type 2 specifically, those living with type 2 diabetes, there are changes in the gut microbiome here, but there's a decrease in the butyrate producing bacteria, more specifically Roseburia and Faecalibacterium. So again, these are different than just the Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes for obesity. So diabetes is different. In obesity, we have a higher rate of Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes, and then in diabetes, we have lower rates of Roseburia and Faecalibacterium. Inflammatory bowel disease. This again is Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. It's characterized by this dysbiosis. So we're talking about an imbalance of gut bacteria. And in these conditions, studies have shown a reduced amount of diversity of the gut microbiome. We have an increase in Enterobacteriaceae. So there's an increase in that in people with IBD. Mental health, there is this thing called the gut-brain axis. There is a link between the gut microbiome, our gut flora and fauna, and of course our mental health, like depression and anxiety. And studies have shown that people living with depression had a lower amount of bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. So can this be corrected with diet? Are we just doomed? No, not necessarily. Diet is very, very important. It influences the composition of our flora and fauna in our guts. So a diet high in fiber, for instance, can increase this beneficial bacteria like bifidobacterium and lactobacilli. And that's what we want. Yogurt has a lot of that. So a diet high in fiber in certain studies increases bifidobacterium and lactobacillus, and these help kind of promote health and lower the chances of getting some of these disease states. And what about plant-based diets, vegetarian, veganism, right? So plant-based, high in fiber, right? Those are high in fiber, have been shown to increase diversity of our gut flora and fauna. And studies have shown that the vegetarian diet leads to a higher abundance of Prevotella, which is associated with a healthy gut. Vegan diets also show similar results. Now we talk about the Western diet. And Western diets are high in fats and they're low in fiber. Okay, what does this do? Well, it's linked to a decrease in gut diversity, gut bacterial diversity. So what this does is it increases pro-inflammatory bacteria. So we get inflammation. Inflammation is not good in the body. It's not. So it lowers the bifidobacteria in our GI tracts. And diets can literally kill off really good bacteria, completely make them extinct over generations of time, over a length of time. And that's not good either. So then we have this industry of probiotics, right? We also have prebiotics. Well, prebiotics are non-digestible fibers, right? Meaning high fiber foods that can selectively stimulate growth of beneficial bacteria. And there are studies that show that prebiotics like inulin, inulin, and fructooligosaccharides increase the amount of bifidobacterium and lactobacillum. So this is a good thing. Prebiotics. So fiber equals prebiotics equals health benefits. Now, dietary interventions, people have been trying different kinds of diets and that sort of thing. Short term, though, if we do kind of get away from that typical Western diet, I'm not saying you can't eat a cheeseburger every once in a while. I'm just saying, we don't want to eat it all the time. If we switch a little bit, we can significantly alter that gut flora and fauna. And studies have shown that switching from this typical Western diet to those rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains. So this is like the Mediterranean diet. This is vegetarianism. This is veganism. This is like the Nordic diets, that sort of thing. It increases beneficial bacteria within just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's how fast our bodies can heal. And this is even in elderly people. Okay, this is spans all generations, all age levels. The thing is that because I mentioned that statistic, only 30 to 40% we share with strangers, that sort of thing. everybody is different. We're all unique. So we need personalized direction, right? To recolonize healthy bacteria in our guts, because we're all unique. And with this, we need a unique target and a unique plan. Now, having said that, we've got diet, we have, prebiotics, the probiotics. What about antibiotics? Antibiotics play a huge role. The use of antibiotics disrupts the gut microbiome. This leads to decreases in really good flora and fauna in our GI tracts, and it leads to an increase in antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So there are studies to show that antibiotic treatments do reduce the diversity of gut microbiomes in healthy people. The study notes that it also takes up to 1.5 years for the gut microbiome to return to its baseline diversity after just one single course of antibiotics. That's 1.5 years. That's an incredible amount of time for just once. And what happens is that we wipe out the good bacteria. We have an overgrowth of the bad bacteria. And I hate to say good and bad, but for lack of a better way to say it, what happens is we get incomplete recovery, because generally what happens, we get the antibiotics and we keep on that Western diet, right? So we're not completely getting back to baseline here. And we have incomplete recovery. And because of that, then our immune systems go down. We get sicker more often. We require more antibiotics to get rid of it because our immune system isn't so robust. And then we just insult upon injury, and then we just make it even worse over time. We're just using more and more antibiotics, and it's just making it worse for our guts, leading to like leaky gut syndrome, leading to bacterial overgrowth. There's a syndrome for that. So it also increases antibiotic resistant bacteria. This is obviously not good. We're talking about C. difficile. And this is very contagious, and it's on the rise, and it's resistant in some cases, and it's very devastating if you have it. I've had it before because I've had people try and get rid of strep throat for me, and over, and I was on antibiotics for over a month. And then, of course, it was inevitable that I got that because I also have autoimmune diseases on top of it. So I already probably had leaky gut syndrome anyway, insult to injury, and then it's just devastating. If you get it, it's just terrible to have it. And it's more and more prevalent. So fortunately for me, I was able to, clear up the infection. I was fine. However, there are people that can't, and it's life-threatening, and it can kill. C. diff can kill. So it's very, very important that we are careful with antibiotic use. We only use it when we need to. And then they've also seen long-term effects. So as we're kids, we take antibiotics, right? So there's studies to show early life use of antibiotics associated with long-term changes in the gut microbiome, which makes sense. And it may increase the risk of developing things such as obesity, asthma, allergies, autoimmune diseases, and the like later on. In addition to that, according to the CDC, about 30% of antibiotics prescribed in like the outpatient, regular GP practice settings are unnecessary. They're prescribed when maybe it's a virus, like a cold or something, and then we take it, and then we develop this antibiotic resistance. And I would say that number is probably pretty low. That's actually probably low. I think it'd be higher than that because there's a lot of overprescribing of antibiotics for various reasons. So consider that. It just destroys the gut it causes dysbiosis, and then we get that C. diff infection rate going way, way up. And then it's hard to get rid of, if at all. And we don't want that. So this early life, right, exposure, which brings me to my next thing. The gut microbiome begins to develop at birth. And it's influenced by things such as the mode of delivery, the feeding practices, breastfeeding versus formula, and of course, early exposure to antibiotics, which I just went over. So let's start with the mode of delivery. We have vaginal birth versus C-section. And this is not a debate, because there are certain women that cannot, they have to have a C-section. So this is not whether one's better than the other. This is just stating what happens. Okay, so because this is not a debate, please. Infants born vaginally are colonized by their mom. So they're colonized by their maternal, vaginal, and fecal bacteria. And we're talking primarily here Lactobacillus, Prevotella, and Schnitzia. Now, these are generally good, right? They enhance the immune system. In contrast, we have infants delivered by C-section are more likely to be colonized by the mother's skin kind of bacteria in the hospital environment. So we have Staphylococcus, we have Corynebacterium, and we have Propionibacterium, Not necessarily as good, but both delivery modes shape the infant and the potential health implications later on in life, whether it's a robust immune response or some that trigger autoimmune diseases and those sorts of things. Now we move on to feeding practices. Again, we're not debating this. It's breastfeeding and it's formula fed. There are women that cannot breastfeed for various reasons. So we've got babies that don't latch on properly. We've got women that unfortunately aren't producing enough milk no matter what they do. We have women that literally have to go back to work like within weeks, and sometimes unfortunately days of delivery, which is another topic for another day. And they really have to depend on formula. We have babies that are jaundiced from their mother's milk and then they need formula. So there's just various reasons. This is not a debate. This is not that. This is just stating what was found. Breastfed infants have a gut flora and fauna that is rich, again, in bifidobacterium. You keep hearing that. Lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are really, really good. In this case, we have bifidobacterium, which is thought to be a robust response for immune system. Formula-fed have a more diverse microbiome. So we have higher levels of Clostridium, Bacteroides, and Enterobacteriaceae. Okay. So again, we show this difference here. Now, early exposure to antibiotics. I've talked about that. Let me just add that early exposure can obviously mess up the gut microbiome, causing dysbiosis. So we're getting a lack of diversity here. And it's been linked to things such as asthma, obesity later in life, diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, allergies like hay fever, that sort of thing, and autoimmune disease. Okay. So all of these things affect our immune system later on. We've got antibiotics, we've got the birth mode, we have the feeding mode upon being born, and we have our diet. That all helps shape us. The neat thing is that our guts can bounce back. It takes a while, like I said, but they can. As I mentioned, 70 to 80% of immune cells are located in the gut. So we need a balanced one, right, in order to have that robust immune response. We don't want dysbiosis, which is that imbalance, okay? And of course, what happens in early life affects us in later life. Now, when I talk about autoimmune disease in the immune system, the gut microbiome interacts with T cells, B cells, dendritic cells. This is really important in autoimmune conditions. Most of the really popular medications that are prescribed right now are immunosuppressive. They go after T cells and B cells. So this really does show a connection and a potential link to autoimmune disease. If you already have the predisposition for it, and then you're not eating the proper way, or you take too many antibiotics or that sort of thing in life, then it can trigger the autoimmune disease. So there is that. So certain gut bacteria promote the differentiation or the change and the restructuring of regulatory T cells, which are critical for maintaining our immune response. If they get out of whack, if they're just different, right, that leads to autoimmune disease. Alterations in the gut microbiome, again, have been linked to immune-related disorders. We're talking inflammatory bowel disease, that's Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, lupus, psoriasis, the list goes on and on. There's way over 100 plus autoimmune conditions. So restoring a healthy gut microbiome through like diet, exercise, that sort of thing, probiotics, they help manage these conditions. These statistics and facts essentially highlight the importance of our gut flora and fauna in maintaining our overall health and the potential implications in various disease states. We want that balance. We want that balance. We want that really robust immune response that's not going to target our own cells and tissues. So, how do we do that? How do we support a healthy gut? Well, here are some evidence-backed ways to support your own gut health. We eat more fiber-rich foods, prebiotic foods. Great, Dr. Kat. What is that, right? Because I hear this a lot. I see this a lot. I hear it a lot. And then nobody really gives all of those great examples. So I will. We've got garlic. Fresh is really great. If you can't get fresh, then, clearly get the garlic. But garlic is actually pretty inexpensive. And I love garlic. So garlic, onions, all varieties, Vidalia, purple onions, and just white onion, just all sorts of onions. Asparagus, expensive, true. It does help. Oats, gluten-free. For those with autoimmune disease, gluten-free is important. They still help. Oats, if you can tolerate them. Flaxseed, chia seeds. These all feed good bacteria and help with that robust immune response. We also can include fermented foods if they're tolerated. So there are some people that cannot tolerate this, so don't ingest them. Please. Just pick and choose what you can do. Just pick one thing that you can change in your life, right? And focus on that. And then if there's, once that becomes a habit, which typically takes 30 to 60 days to form a habit, then try something else, right? But if you can't tolerate it, then don't do it, because then it's not good for you, right? But if you can, we want fermented foods like kefir, kimchi, kombucha, and sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut. Avoid excessive antibiotics when possible. If you have a bacterial infection and you need an antibiotic, then you take the antibiotic. Just don't take it for a cold or a virus, something like that, because they don't work and they actually can harm you. They wipe out the good bacteria. We want to manage our stress. So cortisol impacts our gut flora, and cortisol spikes when we're stressed. We want to practice like meditation. We can do breath work. We can walk in the park. We can hike. We can, if you like to exercise, like to ski or sit on a boat or a pier or talk to your friends or a book club or a movie club or seeing a movie or like a comedy or just like anything like that. Sewing, knitting, tatting, whatever it is, painting. If it relaxes you, that's managing your stress. Super important. And then probiotics, well, there's evidence targeting certain probiotic strains can help. The issue here is that it's really, really expensive and they're not regulated. So we can have certain probiotics. We don't know if what's in there is really in there. And we also don't know if there's mercury or lead also in there and to what extent. So, there are some that are good. This is definitely something to talk to your provider about, your healthcare team, especially if you're immunosuppressed or if you're taking some of those medications that suppress your immune system. You definitely want to talk to your healthcare team because they know you best, first and foremost. And you just want to be careful because you're introducing like bacteria strains. And so we don't want an overgrowth of bacteria. Okay, so it's unique again to each person. Please, as a disclaimer, please talk to your own healthcare team because they know you best. Now, for those of us living with autoimmune conditions like me, consistent changes are powerful. They can boost or they can detract. So we want to track our symptoms after we eat, after every meal. You can do this with an app. You can do an app on your phone, like that note section on your phone. And then I always just do the old-fashioned way, which is writing it in a notebook. And we can track our symptoms after the meals and before meals. And then, of course, we can take that to our healthcare provider. If we're so fortunate to have a functional medicine physician, which I don't right now, but I had in the past, this helps them kind of pinpoint some of the potentially probiotics you can get. And then consider asking your provider if you are having GI issues. Maybe there's like a stool test that you can take for that. A functional medicine doctor would know more about that. And choose whole foods when possible and affordable, because this is really expensive right now. We want to aim for a variety of color, so rainbow of color. Dietitians suggest 20 different fruits and vegetables each week, which is very doable. It seems like a lot, but it's actually quite doable. And always remember that you deserve care that looks after you as a whole, so holistic care, not just your individual diagnosis. We want to have a plan for the whole person, the whole you, that fits you and your unique situation. You are important and you are worthy. Final thoughts. The gut immune connection is very real, and the science keeps growing, which is great. Supporting your gut may not cure autoimmune disease. It may not cure the chronic illness. Okay, there's no cures for that necessarily, but it can reduce inflammation. It can improve energy, and it can support better health outcomes alongside your medications. So this is just a really great opportunity to open up and voice your concerns and your interest and curiosity with your physicians. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you so much. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend, a family member, somebody that's going through this. Leave a review, and please subscribe. Subscribe for others for more. And if you have a topic you'd like for me to cover potentially, contact me. You can reach me. I have a contact page on my website. It's innovationsmedicationmanagement.com, and there's a contact page. Please contact me and let me know in that section that you can write me and tell me, and potentially have it on as another podcast episode. So until next time, this is Dr. Kat signing off. I want you to please be well and be kind to yourself, be kind to your body, and be your own advocate. Thanks again for listening. We will talk again soon.